Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Wills, Women, and Wealth podcast. I'm Elsa W. Smith, your Maryland estate planning and probate attorney, and I'm thrilled to have you with us today. We're here to empower women who value their health, wealth, and the legacies they're creating. This podcast delves into a diverse range of subjects encompassing finance, law, mental and physical health, and beyond. Our commitment is to furnish you with invaluable insights, engaging expert interviews, and enlightening episodes that address your questions on wills, estate planning, and probate matters. Remember, this is your community, and we want to hear from you. Engage with us, ask questions, suggest topics. Let's build a dialogue. Reach out to us on social media or leave us a comment below. Your input fuels the conversations we have. You can find all of our episodes on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for our upcoming content. We appreciate your support, and if you enjoy the podcast, please consider leaving us a 5-star review. Your review helps amplify our reach and brings our content to more listeners. And now, on with the podcast. The title for today's episode is Confident Financial Outcomes: What Every Female Entrepreneur Needs to Know. Today's guest is Lynn Corazzi. Lynn is a former Procter Gamble finance leader, now a fractional CFO, and founder of Data to Profit Consulting. Known as the Data Magician, Lynn brings clarity to the numbers that often overwhelm business owners. As an entrepreneur himself, he knows what it's like to wear too many hats that don't quite fit. That's why he's passionate about demystifying accounting and helping business owners truly understand their financials to drive profit, build long-term business value, and create personal wealth. He never wants to hear someone say, "I wish someone had told me." To Lynn, a CFO's job is simple: deliver your confident financial outcomes. Lynn, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Elsa, I am so excited to be here, and thank you for that very, very kind introduction.
It's my pleasure. I've been looking forward to this conversation. I don't like to call it an interview. I always like to call it a conversation. So let's get right into it. We've got a lot of stuff to cover today. I'd like the audience really to start to get to know you. I told them a little bit about your history, your bio, but you went from being a finance leader at Procter Gamble to a fractional CFO and entrepreneur. What inspired that transition?
The first step was after deciding to leave Procter Gamble. Yes, I spent 14 years there, went through all kinds of finance and accounting assignments, and really came to the conclusion at some point is, I could have a series of very, very well-paying jobs. Procter was very generous, but I wouldn't be able to have a impact on an organization of that size. I was going to do the jobs that followed somebody else, bring my own little twist to them. But I really wanted to get out and see, can I put my paw prints on some other organization and have an impact? And that's exactly what happened. I went from P&G, moved to a company here in Wisconsin, making Italian cheeses. And it was a great organization. We did lots of really cool, super things, some in finance and accounting, some more in support of sales and marketing. And when I left there, I went to a smaller company and then said, what I really enjoy doing is educating and teaching and working with individuals. And that's how I ended up starting Data to Profit and my own business.
I love it. What does being the data magician mean in helping small business owners?
There is so much information that even a small company creates. And whether you just think about an invoice, you got the person's name, address, what they bought, how many they bought, the price, the time, and all that information is just there waiting to be used. And I was working with a business coach telling him what I do. He said, "Oh, you're a data magician." I said, "Pat, no, I can't do that. I can't call myself that." And he said, "Well, Lynn, think of it this way. To a caveman, a big lighter is freaking magic. What you do with numbers and what you can tease out of them and the story that you can tell, the decisions that you can help make, you are that magician. So get comfortable with yourself because that's what you are. You're a data magician." And from there, it kind of morphed into, as I started working more with small business owners on strategic issues, the direction of their business, the data magician is just kind of morphed into a fractional CFO.
So let's pivot for a minute. And in your bio, we talked about, or I mentioned, I should say, how entrepreneurs wear too many hats. Many women, and this podcast is geared primarily towards women. Many women, especially Black women entrepreneurs, they feel overwhelmed managing the financial side of their business. Where should they start, in your opinion?
Oh, where should they start? There are so many places that one can start, because really when we talk about business financial management, and in preparation for this, our meeting this morning, I just asked ChatGPT, what is business financial management? And give me a list of everything it includes. And it's a 25-word definition. There were 12 different subpoints, each having 3 or 4 items below that. But really, when it comes down to it, where do you start is making sure that you have some foundational knowledge of what your bookkeeper or accounting is actually doing. So, and what does that include? Understand what your financial statements tell you and why they're laid out the way that they are. And having questions for them, getting the confidence to ask those questions, because if that accounting is not right, it has some huge implications, potentially costly ones, if it's wrong. And for example, you could be, if something is miscategorized and your tax preparer is looking at it in the wrong way, you could either be claiming too much or too little. That has tax implications. If your accountant or your bookkeeper messes something up and you're paying them, again, pulling a number that's reasonably close, $50 an hour for them to do their bit, to fix it, you're going to end up paying somebody like a CPA or somebody else a couple $100 an hour. So work on the foundations, get those right, make sure your bank account statements are reconciled, and you're off to a good start.
What are the the most common financial blind spots you see in small businesses?
They are not engaged at all in their numbers. So it's not that there's a blind spot. They're just running blind. They're trusting somebody else. No, seriously. I get it. People don't like their numbers for whatever reasons. And I've got some own thoughts on that, but that's a question for another day. But the first thing they do is somebody else has that. Nobody else is ever going to care more about your numbers than you do. And it really comes down to the question I hear a lot. My accountant, my bookkeeper told me I made $150,000. Where is it? Just asking that simple question is just a perfect example of what they don't know. Because if you don't know where your money went, how do you know that it's going wisely, it's not being wasted, where their opportunities are to make more?
For those in the audience who are just joined us, our topic for the podcast today is confident financial outcomes, what every female entrepreneur needs to know. Let's continue the conversation. Lynn, now I want to pivot to talking about building wealth versus just making money. You talk about building long-term value and personal wealth, not just profit. Why does that distinction matter?
It really does. When you start thinking about why you're in business to make money. And eventually you're going to get out of your business. And then what? Unfortunately, I got a very good exposure to this idea of building wealth in the business and then building personal wealth, because I started working with a woman and we worked together for about 3 years. She inherited a business after dad passed way too suddenly. And then despite all the other things that were going on in the business, he never bothered to create his own personal wealth outside the business. He invested so much money back into the business, there was a lot of debt. She was running two separate businesses without good processes or anything else. But the most unfortunate part of all, there were no other personal assets after that. And so one of the things that I think makes me a little different than a lot of other folks doing what I do is that I tell people when we work together, we're going to get into the business side of your business, but we're also going to make sure that you understand and are creating wealth outside of the business because it is about your financial future.
Great answer. How can a strong financial strategy support a woman's estate plan or retirement goals?
Yeah. Again, when you start taking money out of your business, there's only three things that you can do with it. You've paid yourself and you've given yourself extra distributions. So you could either spend that money, you can save it, or you can continue to pay down personal debt. We want to really encouraging you, build money into that wealth, make sure that you're diversifying even your own personal portfolio or whatever you're doing, and then just making sure that as you continue to accumulate that, you want to make sure that that wealth is protected through estate planning, tax efficiency, and all the other things that you ought to be looking at. And so again, it's unfortunate that business owners go into business and they're told your business and personal life money should be kept separate. That is true when it comes to the fiscal management of your business, but your business and your personal wealth, they are one and the same. And unfortunately, so many business owners also say, hey, when I'm ready to sell, my little baby's going to be worth $5 million because that's what I wish and hope and pray that it's going to be worth. Unfortunately, that's often not the case. So if you're planning 100% of your retirement coming from the value of your business, there's a strong probability you're going to be disappointed. That's why you got to focus both of those things and balance the business and the personal and surround the personal with the plans to protect it.
Yeah, that's a bitter truth for many entrepreneurs, but one that needs to be heard. Now I want to shift and talk about the CFO perspective on legacy planning. How does your work as a CFO intersect with estate or succession planning for business owners?
Timing of this question is perfect because I just started working like 2 months ago with a woman who wants to sell her business in the next 3 years. And so the last time we got together, we went through everything that takes within her business and decided that, the first area she needs to start thinking about is the personnel planning and making sure that everything is in place so that when she's able to actually sell that business, she's not selling a job. She's selling a fully functioning organization. And we're now starting to prioritize what she needs to know, what she needs to prepare, and what kind of conversations she needs to have to make sure that that team is in place so that her business can run without her for 30 days at a time within the next year. That's like the interim goal that we have. And she said, wow, I can step back for 30 days. So that's our objective. Yes. Then it'll be 60 days. By the time you're ready to sell, you should be able to go away for a quarter. And really it's that it is being very methodical about doing it, because once you decide that you want to, and it's time for you to exit your business, you can't sell the job. You can't sell your job. You have to sell a business, which means that business can run without you.
Which means that it has to have systems in place, the people, and you need to have a vision of what this valuable asset is and what you're transferring. Yeah. And it's funny enough when we, with my clients, when I talk to them about succession planning, a lot of times they have not really thought about it. They assumed that maybe their child, their adult child will take over the business, but they never stop to consider whether the child even wants to take over the business, right? They may have their own plans, their own dreams. So I'm sure that's all part of also what you do to an extent, but you're dealing with making sure that they have something that is marketable. They have
Yes.
a business that is marketable.
Yeah. I tell people when you hire me, it's not just me you're getting my entire network. So it's people like you, Elsa, that need to be involved. This woman that I just started working with, I've already introduced her to an enrolled agent. Is someone who has more tax planning skills in this area than the average CPA. I've introduced her to a broker, even three years out, so she can get that first assessment on what's the reality of her business looking like. And then we started going down the checklist of all the things that she needs to do. And we may need to do an HR audit to make sure that, and I think she's pretty well covered in this area, but we're going to bring people in just to get perspective, and so that she can learn, does this extra service need to be looked at as an additional investment in her business, to making sure that that business is as valuable as possible when she goes to sell.
What role does financial literacy play in empowering women to make confident legacy decisions?
Oh, it's confident legacy decisions, because you're going to have a better understanding of what the true value of your business is, what makes up that value. You're going to make sure that you have your wealth created outside. But even the journey along the way, if you're not feeling financially confident today, you will know what type of person is on your financial team. You have a bookkeeper, you got a CPA. Is there a banker? Is there a wealth advisor? Who are all these other people on your team? You really need to have an understanding of that. Getting back to, I talked about when I Google or asked ChatGPT about what is the definition of good financial management. It really comes to making smart choices with your money to keep your business healthy, profitable, and growing. And that financial literacy includes both accounting and finance, which there are huge differences of. It includes, making sure that you're managing your profitability, that you're not taking on too much debt. And there's just so many traps that you can fall into if you're trying to figure out if you go it alone. And unfortunately, folks like me get called in when there's a problem. And, and what we do not do, even though I'm the data magician, I cannot do financial magic and magically make your business better all at once. All this stuff will take time to fix.
Oh, you'd be in even higher demand if you could do that.
I wish I could.
Lynn, something came to mind, and I know we talked in show prep about what we were going to talk about on the show today, but something came to mind in response to your last comment. What would you say to an entrepreneur who, after listening to you say, well, you need a wealth manager, you need a CPA, you need this, that, and the other. And she says, Lynn, look, I don't feel like I'm there yet. I'm just starting out. I don't have quote unquote wealth to manage, at this point, because I'm still, maybe in like the first 5 years of my business journey. What would you say to her?
The management of your business began the day that you sent that check in to establish your LLC. You started managing cash. Your cash flow started with that first check that you wrote. And at the end of the day, your numbers, whether they're for what happened this week, what happened this month, or last year, they only reflect your decisions and your behaviors. Everything gets turned into a number eventually. Right. And if you're looking at building wealth long term, start saving now. So even if you're just making, $40,000 a year, take a little slice of that and start putting it away. Build those habits of what's going to be good for you long term. And just because I'm encouraging you to engage with these people, first of all, just understand who they are, what they do. You don't need them all today. You don't need them all, maybe even next year. But by gosh, you know at some point in time, you will need them. And like the reason that so many businesses fail, they run out of cash, right? We've all heard that before. It's not that they're not profitable. They just run out of cash. Running out of cash is a surprise to no one. You see it coming. You feel it coming because you worry about it. The time to go to the banker and say, look, I'd like to borrow some money is not when you need it. That's the only time they're going to say no. You have a relationship with somebody, leverage what financial activities you have, get that line of credit now when you have money, even if it's not a huge one, have it to draw on, because that's going to help you get through the tough times, not the emergency.
I'm sure that bit is going to help so many people watching and listening. You've said that you never want to hear the quote, "I wish someone had told me." What one piece of advice do you wish every business owner understood earlier?
That you have more power over the people that support you than you think. Again, you have this team, and you are the team leader until you bring somebody in, to come have your back from a financial standpoint. You are your CFO. You're the chief marketing officer, the chief HR officer, the chief IT officer. You're all these other chiefs.
Cook and bottle washer.
And when you go to your bookkeeper, you can set expectations, or your CPA. I worked with a young lady last year. We were together for 6 months, and actually her mom said, she got my newsletter, and she said, I'm reading through this, Lynn, and my daughter needs you. And when I met with Laura, she said, look, I've been spending $1,000 a month with my CPA, which just seemed to me like an awful lot of money. But she knew that she wasn't getting good service. I said, okay, Laura, next time we get together, what we're going to do, we're going to take 4 pictures out of your QuickBooks. We're going to send them to your CPA and say, we would like to talk about what type of refund you're going to get. They never called her. They never sent her a text. She never got an email from them. But 3.5 weeks later, she received a check for $6,000. They gave back $6 out of $9,000 because they had not performed the services. She said, I had no idea I could do that. So when you sign up with your bookkeeper or your CPA, understand exactly what they're going to do, but also know what you want them to do. You want them to get your financial statements to you within 5 business days. You want them to point out in what is different from the previous month or the previous year. You want them to give you advice. And if they're not doing that, fire them. There's a group here in Milwaukee that serves women, predominantly women entrepreneurs. And I was doing a training class with them, and I started telling them that. And this woman just raised her hand and said, Lynn, I got to say something. No one has ever told me this before. You have given me so much information and confidence just to ask the questions. I never want to hear anybody say, God, I wish I could have asked the questions, because that's all you should be doing. You can set those expectations.
I love that. That's so empowering. Now, without naming names, of course, can you share a client success story where finances and personal wealth trajectory, changed?
Sure. Again, I got to go back to my favorite client. This is the woman that we were together for 3 years. And when she took over, there were no procedures. There were 2 businesses being run out of one P&L, which is just like the biggest ultimate no-no. When one is a coffee shop type business, the other one made ice cream and chocolates. That was the business. And after 3 years, basically, after a conversation, she didn't exactly say these words, but it was like, Lynn, I think we've got this now. And because she now had a bookkeeper in-house that had been trained, all of her accounts were up to date. She understood what a good, a monthly review actually looked like. She was managing against a budget. There were KPIs that we had put into place and talked about strengthening those. And so when I can walk out of a place and someone says, Lynn, we got this, that to me is what success really looks like.
I love that.
I'm not meant to be your long-term person, but boy, if I can tell you something about your business and give you the tools to run it yourself, that's to me is where, again, CFO does not stand for Chief Financial Officer. It's Confident Financial Outcomes.
And I love that. For those who are just joining us on the podcast, I'm here with Lynn Corazzi. And our topic today is confident financial outcomes, what every female entrepreneur needs to know. Let's continue the conversation. Lynn, what's one small habit that can lead to big long-term results?
Again, I'm going to go back to the savings bit, because it's savings and investing. And sometimes, we start talking about this. I'm working on a book with somebody too about business financial management, and we got big discussions about investments. And you can't save your way into profitability, but make sure that you're continually looking around at where can I create value within my business. So when you're offering a training class to some of your employees, that's an investment that's going to pay off in terms of better safety practices, better quality practices. Investing in yourself. Oh my gosh, a CFO sounds too corporate. I can't use that. Invest in yourself. Make sure that you understand what's going on. Invest in marketing strategies. And don't get into the habit of saying, oh, these are just all expenses. Yes, accounting classifies them as expenses, but they really are investments. I would rather invest time in having a lawyer approve a contract or a trust agreement than wait until the last minute and count on that same lawyer or wealth manager or whoever to get me out of a bad situation. The investment is always going to pay off. Start with small investments and get out of your business now and then. Work on it instead of in it.
Yeah, I love it. Are there tools or systems that you recommend to help business owners track financial health without overwhelm?
QuickBooks, a basic knowledge of QuickBooks can get you a long way. It's a relatively simple thing to use. There's all kinds of people that are out there doing QuickBooks. And so just engage with somebody, interview them, make sure that you're confident with them. But also then think about what's the other information about your business that you need to know. This is where key performance indicators, or we refer to them as KPIs. Make sure that you understand which KPIs are driving your business. Is it, if you've got a restaurant or coffee shop, number of customers a day or average check per day? Understand your cost. Watch Shark Tank. If you've never watched an episode of Shark Tank, watch a couple of them. You'll hear a couple recurring themes. They're going to say, what are your numbers? What's your sales? What is your growth? They want to understand if you've driven them. They want you to understand your cost, your profitability, and your customer acquisition cost. And those three things come up all the time. And so it's not just about the numbers with dollars and cents. You have to have other numbers that are guiding you. And so, it's an average job that, if you have a project or service-based type of business, but find out what really drives your business, measure that, because your numbers matter. All of them, not just the ones that are dollars and cents.
What should someone do if they are afraid to look at their numbers?
In some ways, it kind of comes back to the employee who never looks forward to their evaluation. Because if I'm afraid to get that evaluation and that feedback, it's probably because I know that I'm not doing as well as I should be doing. And so, I think sometimes people are afraid because they kind of have the feeling that their business isn't as operating as smoothly or as profitably as it should be, as they want to be. They're working way too hard for what they're getting out, but they don't really want to drive into their numbers and look. I think the other thing that they're afraid of is that somebody is going to say, God, you don't know this? You're a failure. You're incompetent. What's wrong with you? And I think sometimes, unfortunately, that's the way, some people approach their education. I'm going to give you really, really tough love and make you feel like crap in the process. I'm going to meet people where they are, and we're going to go through this fear of their numbers and understand where it comes from and why, and we're going to get you over it.
Lynn, you've given us so much information, and I can't wait for people to watch and listen to this episode and replay it and share it. Mm-hmm. You have something really exciting going on. They're called guided money tours. Could you tell the audience more about that and how they can get connected with you for one of these tours?
I would love to, because I talked about this, what business financial management is, and that big long definition that I've got. I realized that a couple months ago, that part of the problem that business owners have is there's not one place that you can go and get that good definition of business financial management, what it includes, and tells you about it. And so guided money tours is basically, it's a jumpstart program into what is smart money management. And tour number one is a quick who's on your team, difference between finance and accounting. And when you hire these people in their roles, what do they do? What do they don't do? And what should you ask when you hire? Tour number two is a 360-degree view of your business. And what by that, I mean, we're going to look back 3 years through the eyes of a CFO. What's your business story coming out that I can share with you? But then also we're going to use your financial statements to walk through so you can see when money comes in, how it flows across your income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow, so you know where your money went. So you can answer that question, where did my money go? The third tour is I'm going to give you an operating budget, because I firmly believe that it's better to manage your expectations towards some type of goal than just looking backwards, which is basically what your accountant is going to do for you. And we're going to talk about where you want to go, build a plan so you can actually see the potential value. So at the end of the day, it's a 5-4-5-5-5 offer. We're going to cover 5 years of your financial story. We're going to do it in less than 5 hours of your time over 5 weeks. So it's not going to be sitting in the classroom, experiencing something, watching a bunch of made up stuff. It's a deep dive in your business, and it's that jumpstart to confident financial management.
Lynn, you bring so much credibility, and you're personable too. I'm sure that people would love to work with you. As you know, most of my audience is here in the DMV, Maryland, District of Columbia, and Virginia. Are you able to assist entrepreneurs in this area?
Absolutely, because with this technology today, we can be anywhere. And by the way, last weekend was the 4th of July. Got to spend it in DC. I can go to the DC area anytime and meet with people there. I just love that part of the world. But yes, I do. I can work all over, particularly with this guided money tours, but even the fractional CFO services, which are longer term engagement. But being able to work with you, my strong preference would be, if we're going to have a long-term relationship, I'm going to come out and see you absolutely for sure. But the guided money tours is something that's available anywhere.
And to that point, I'm going to put your contact information up on the screen. But for those who are listening, what's the best way for people to reach you? Your website, phone number, social media. Please share.
Yeah. My website is data, the number 2, the word profit.net. data2profit.net. My phone number 920-948-3355, and I am all over LinkedIn. And again, the last name is spelled Corazzi, Corazzi. There aren't very many of us on LinkedIn, so I'm incredibly easy to find.
Outstanding. Lynn, it's really been a joy to have you as a guest on today's episode. Like I said, you've shared so much information that entrepreneurs, particularly female entrepreneurs, need to hear. And my focus, as you know, is on female entrepreneurs, because a lot of times we've been left out of the conversation. We don't have the confidence or the tools to allow us not just to survive, but to thrive. So from the bottom of my heart, I just want to thank you. And before I let you go, because I know you're a busy guy, are there any closing thoughts that you want to share with the audience, and particularly talk to us about the importance of the right mindset?
Mindset is everything. And, again, being an entrepreneur myself, I've ridden those roller coasters. Last October, I became my best client. I bought a service I did not understand, SEO marketing. I bought it from a company that I did not fully vet. Yeah. The only thing I knew, like my other client before, is like, I paid a lot of money for services that I did not get. And it gets to your head. When you make those kind of mistakes, they mess with you. And I get it. And so, my fear of dabbling, and I felt at the end of it, my mindset was I was cheated. I felt stupid and I was lost. I didn't know where else to turn. Ended up talking to a friend of mine who's a marketing strategist. And she said, Lynn, no, you're good. But the confidence and the headset and the mindset, that's the most important. That's the most difficult thing that we deal with. It's not just the roller coaster we ride. We ride every single ride on the carnival, from the tilt-a-whirl to the scrambler to the roller coaster to the haunted house to those swings that just you're going round and round and everything feels good. When you're having success, tell a buddy, celebrate your successes more than anything else. And then when you need the help, don't be afraid to reach it out, because somebody there is going to be able to help you.
Thank you. Thanks, Lynn. It's been great having you on the podcast today. And I look forward to talking with you again. And you've just been wonderful. Thank you so much. And I will talk with you soon. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, Elsa.
Again, Lynn, wasn't he a wonderful guest, everybody? Lynn, thank you so much for joining us today on the Wills, Women, and Wealth podcast, and, for sharing your wisdom, your insights on financial clarity and confident decision-making are invaluable for any business owner, but particularly for female entrepreneurs. Now, for those of you entrepreneurs who have are still on the fence about doing your estate planning, and you're in the District of Columbia or the state of Maryland, I invite you to schedule a complimentary 15-minute call with a member of our team. The link will be in the show notes, as is the contact information for our fabulous guest today. Again, I want to thank you for joining me on this episode. Stay informed, stay empowered, and take control of your legacy. I'll see you in the next episode.